Northern European.
So what you're saying is he's pretty closely related to the people that live in that Alp region today.
That's correct.
Okay. So he probably would be an ancestor of someone living in that Bolzano area.
Yes.
Okay. Any information regarding language skills, or is that something that they couldn't make a determination on?
No written materials were found on the Iceman in addition to pottery, so it's extremely difficult to even classify him in regards to a culture. There's not much we can really say about.
What about the tattoos? Were there any letters or
No. The tattoos were done in geometric patterns, which mainly used to follow along the curve of pressure points. So not much can be said about that either.
If he was, let's say, somehow brought back to life today, would he be able to be indistinguishable from a modern man?
Well, as I mentioned, there are clear differences. Particularly with his tibia and bone structure, his body is more suitable to mobile lifestyle. His AP load capacity is much higher. He'd be able to travel longer distances, etc., etc. His body was determined to be his age was determined to be about 45 years old, and this would have been extremely old for his contemporaries. In fact, only 2% lived to reach the age of 40. So his body shows marked signs of aging. And his teeth have at least one side, his left side of his mouth, has shown an erosion of 3 millimeters, which is significant, and it shows that he had used his teeth as tools. There's also marked signs of osteoporosis. His body he suffered from whipworm, from parasites. We find in his fingernails there's a marking which showed he suffered a horizontal line on his fingernail that showed that he suffered from chronic illness. In addition to this, there's also signs that he suffered from clogged arteries, and extremely clogged for that matter. And at the age of 40, 45, this is extremely it's extremely rare, or extremely significant wear on the body.
So we can assume that he was a hunter because he had all the tools and the ability to live on the wild on his own. However, his tribe, the people that he came from, were not primarily hunters. They were both hunters and farmers.
Well, for a typical Neolithic civilization, you would have hunter-farmer. Actually, mainly farmer. But see, there's still some debate as to the profession of the Iceman. I would argue that he was a hunter. The indicators of this would be colon samples showing that he ate deer meat, as well as the majority of his clothing. For example, his hat was made from bear, and if he was a shepherd, he would mostly be using goat and sheep, for example, as tools, and we would find that in the stomach. To answer the question, however,
what's the question? Question was hunter versus farmer.
Well,
do you feel that his tribe, we know that he was a hunter, but was the people he was living with, was he, obviously he wasn't on his own, or maybe he was, I don't know, was he?
Well, I'm sure they would have followed those roles, and actually, given the fact that he lives near the Alps, there's very little farming area. So basically, people would normally have to follow or take on many different roles. The Iceman himself, we know for a fact that he served the role as a smelter. He worked in a furnace, a smithy. We know this from arsenic samples in his hair, which are extremely high. They are an indicator that he worked over flame for extended periods of time. But in addition to this, if he just stayed down there in his smithy and his furnace area, why would he exhibit the body a highly mobile Mesolithic man, even though he was in the Neolithic period? And why would he be found in the area where he was found? It's highly suspicious, highly suspect.
So when they found the body, they determined his age by radiocarbon dating initially.
Well, they determined how far old the matter was, 3,500. But in terms of his actual age, the age of death, that was determined from looking both at his bone structure and development of the bone.
Were they ever able to make a linkage with other, let's say, bones that they found in the area of the same time frame, 3000 BC?
Well, here's the funny part. There were no other bodies found in the area. And this makes it extremely difficult to classify.
Maybe he didn't belong in that area. Maybe he was from another area. Maybe he was traveling. Is that?
Well, he was certainly traveling. He's certainly from south of the area, and this has been determined from pollen samples found within the man's clothing, on his clothing, as well as the materials that were found within his birch bark container, which I forgot to mention. Now, he would carry along this birch bark container rather than pottery. Obviously, pottery would be too bulky and it would break. He needed something highly mobile to bring up with him in the Alps. And the birch bark container contains samples of maple leaves, which he would hold embers in to start up a flame, start up a fire very quickly. And the charcoal, the material within this, mostly comes from south of the region. The only thing that comes from the area where he was found, especially the altitude that he was found, was the dwarf willow, which only accounted for 0.8% of the material. Now, if we were to argue that he was a shepherd, for instance, we would expect him to be up in the Alps, up in the higher elevation where the high pastures are, for a greater period of time, and this would have definitely accounted for a greater percentage if he was in fact a shepherd. This, in addition to his flint tools, which are all from the Lake Garda region, which is south of the area, seem to indicate that he's from the south. In addition, his arrowhead. In addition to his arrowhead, and the arrowhead found in his shoulder blade, they're all developed in a southern style. So this means that both Ötzi and his attacker presumably came from south of the region.
Okay, the climate in that area, it's pretty cold at this time, 2007. Back 3000 BC, was there an ice age? Was the climate significantly different? Was it warmer, colder? Was there any research done on that?
I can't say.
Not sure.
Okay. I would imagine it's similar to contemporary times. It was certainly extremely cold up there, and especially when he was there. Pollen samples found that he found the hops bean seed, which only blooms in early spring in the area.
Okay, there was a migration from the south to the north. Was that like a migratory road, a natural way to get from the north to the south? Because it's close to a place called the Brenner Pass, which is the only way to get through the Alps. Is there a coincidence to that, or is that actually a thoroughfare that was used by a primitive man?
Well, it's actually interesting that you mentioned this. Recent studies done by glaciologist Jarot Patzel have found that the Iceman was in fact found on a prehistoric highway. So he certainly knew where he was going, as he must have been fleeing from his attackers. Basically, what Patzel did was he mapped out the easiest means of linking the Ventgont Valley of the south side of the Tyrol's. This is basically where the transhumance would occur. Now, transhumance is basically the transport and grazing of sheep and other livestock, which would have used comprised a significant part of the livelihood of settlements and civilizations in the area. So basically, what he did was he mapped out the area to link this to the Ötztal range of the Alps, where there were the highest, the best, richest pastures. And his goal was to determine the most efficient natural path to link the two areas. Now, while at first his path led him across established paths, where he ended up, which is in fact interesting, is 100 meters away from where the Iceman was found. So this is significant.